Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today is not going to be a nail polish video. Today is going to be my top books of 2025. I thought it would be fun to go through the books that I read this year and tell you my faves, but along the way I'm going to give you like a one-sentence review of each book that I read. So I thought that would be fun. So I kicked off 2025 with starting the Outlander series. I think I read like 7 or 8 of them, but I'm just gonna say Outlander series, top 10. Woman goes back in time from the 1940s to like the 17 somethings, 40s-ish around, and meets the love of her life, but then does she stay back in that time? Does she go back to her current time? You'll have to read it and find out. The next book that I read in 2025 was Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is part of the Fourth Wing trilogy. This is a romantasy about a girl who is in a college to be a dragon rider, and similar to Harry Potter, some things, kind of world-ending things, get in the way of her being able to finish all of her schooling. After that, I watched First Lie Wins. First Lie Wins is about this girl who does jobs for this mysterious Mr. Smith, and she kind of like plays these different parts to infiltrate different people's lives. The next book I read is in the romance genre. This is Funny Story by Emily Henry. This is a fake dating book where these two people decide to date each other based upon the fact that their exes are now together. And I think they were both cheated on by these people, and so they're like trying to get back at them by dating each other. Next, I read Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. I never actually saw the movie, but the book was a little bit too out there for me. This is sci-fi. There's like this troupe of people. Some are scientists, some are more military, and they go into this area that's like whenever people go in, I think they don't come out, and they're basically gonna go do an investigation of it. And this book is kind of like a fever dream. You really don't know if what you're reading is real, and a lot of the times I didn't understand what I was reading. I'm just gonna go ahead and say this one was not for me. Then I read The Count of Monte Cristo. I finally read this bad boy, and it is huge. It's an actual tome, like a giant boulder of a book. They included this much in the film of this much plot. So basically it's the story of this man who gets betrayed by people, finds himself in this jail for many, many years, and finds a way to escape, and then decides he's going to avenge himself of all these people that betrayed him, and he's gonna go take revenge. So it was a good time. It was a long time. Next, I read James and Cain. This is a short little read. It's a film noir classic that's been, made into a movie. This insurance salesman, he falls in lust with this woman he meets and decides he's gonna help her kill her husband. Okay, next I read Project Hail Mary. This is in my top 10 books of 2025, if not very, very, very top. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. The movie starring Ryan Gosling is coming out in March, and this is the story of a bromance between a human and an alien as they both try to save their respective worlds. Next I read an Agatha Christie, an oldie but a goodie, The Man in the Brown Suit. Basically, there's this guy at a train station, and he gets pushed off onto the tracks and dies. And the girl who witnesses it kind of gets swept up in this like espionage, jewel theft, and she doesn't know who to trust out of all these people. The girl who was taken, I gave this one 3 stars. The girl who disappears, her sister is teaming up with the one of the 2 girls that is still around to try to discover the disappearance of her sister. Okay, next I read 4 books by Alan Eskins. I started with The Life We Bury, and this is a book about this, I think he's in high school or is he in college, and he's writing an English assignment actually. and he has to write a biography of a person. He chooses this man who's in a nursing home, and he's a dying Vietnam vet and a convicted murderer, and he chooses to kind of look into it and see if this person was wrongly convicted. The next book in the series is called The Guise of Another. This book follows a detective, Alexander Rupert, and he has been looking into the false identity of a car accident victim named James Putman, and then it gets all twisty. And then the third one's called The Heavens May Fall. Oh, this one's currently on sale at Audible. The Rupert guy from the last book, it's like 4 years later now, and he and his friend, who is an attorney, basically the attorney's representing this person who is suspected of killing his wife, and the detective thinks for sure that guy killed his wife, so now their friendship is being tested. So there's that one, and then the fourth one is called The Deep Dark Descending, and this is where I stopped. I think there are two more after that, but I didn't read them. This one is about, like, is he going to take matters into his own hands, or as a police detective, is he going to, you know, do things by the book and try to get legal justice, or is he just going to go straight for revenge? So I think the last one I gave a 3, and I was kind of disinterested in continuing the series. I also read Perfect Sun by Frida McFadden. I've read a lot by her. This is not one that I liked all that much. I gave it a 3. This mom suspects her perfect teenage son Liam of a crime after a local girl disappears. I also read The Boyfriend by Frida McFadden. Like I said, I read a lot by her. And this one I gave 4 stars. This one takes place in New York, and this woman has had bad luck with dating men, and she falls for this doctor, Tom, and she's like, well, this dude is perfect. Okay, what is the secret thing he's hiding? And then it comes to light that there's this person murdering women, and she starts suspecting her boyfriend. Next after that, I read Naked in Death by J.D. Robb. J.D. Robb is actually a pseudonym for Nora Roberts, who is a very famous romance author. But this one is mystery thriller vibes. And there's this homicide detective named Eve Dallas. This takes place in the future, and Eve is, I already said, she's a detective, and she and her, I think, billionaire boyfriend, they're both trying to solve the murders of these sex workers. Next I read Mark of the Fool. I think I gave this one a 3. This one is, it's in a genre of books where they're kind of like a Dungeons and Dragon game. I think that this kind of style I decided was not really for me. So basically there's this kid, his name is Alex, he's a Magic Academy student, he's marked as the Fool, and like whoever gets that kind of curse at the start of the term, I feel like is how it went, you're likely to be the one causing the problems or something, and so people don't like you. And he's out to prove that the Fool is actually like a really valuable member of, you know, a team of people that would go out and try to do their missions or whatever. The Decagon House murder. These people, they go to this place, I believe it's like well known as having a murder take place there in the past, and all these kids, they're at college age, they belong to this club. They've like challenged themselves to go to this mysterious kind of like abandoned island and live out some days and nights there or something, kind of testing the theory that bad stuff happens there. Anyway, guess what? They all start dying one by one. I read another romance book called The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This is a book where it's another fake dating book. The two main characters are the siblings of 2 people getting married, and at their wedding, those 2 people get very, very sick, and the 2 siblings of the 2, you know, they're not siblings to each other. They decide to take the honeymoon that this couple was going to go on and just go enjoy it. Then I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is the story of Haymitch. So if you remember, Haymitch is the mentor of Katniss and Peeta in the original trilogy, or that's not a trilogy. Anyway, the original books. This is the prequel story of him, and the movie's coming out soon. And I was very dissatisfied with the ending, and so it kind of soured my feelings on the book. Then I got into the Thursday Murder Club books, and I either read the first two or the first three. I'm gonna put this first one in my top 10 books of the year because it's about it's like 4 or 5 friends that live in a senior living center together, but they are like defying the odds by like the stereotype of, being put out to pasture or whatever, but they're not. They're all still very active and their minds are solving crimes, and it is cute, it is exciting, there's great mysteries, and I'm going to continue reading all the books in the series because I love the characters. They are so, so good. Just a bunch of stinkers. So yeah, really loved that one. And that's written by Richard Osman, so I gave that one 5 stars. I read 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I think I'd read one other one by her. She does second chance romance a lot, and this one is about these two, like, they were each other's first love, and then they meet up later after having both gone through a bunch of stuff, and they're both authors, and it's about when they come back together, I think. Then I read one of the strangest books I read all year by Simon Jimenez, The Spear Cuts Through Water. This is a story that takes place like in layers, where this first layer, it's almost like dimensions, but this first layer, you're hearing this person hearing a story like from their grandmother or something, and then you get into the story that they're hearing, which then turns out to be like a play. So you're getting like these layers. Am I making any sense? Anyway, it was so trippy. I did like the stories that are happening, but it was pretty confusing. Like, I had to really pay attention. I read P.D. James' Cover Her Face, and this is the book about a murder of a maid in this household where basically it seems like everybody wanted to do away with this lady, and just the figuring out of who done it. Next, I read Before the Coffee Gets Cold. This one was interesting. This is about this coffee shop that has this magical power where if you sit in this one specific seat and you get served some coffee, you can travel. I forget if you travel in the past or in the future, but you can travel to a time and meet with somebody there at the table, and it's like to help to give people closure of different things. Next, I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. I don't think that I've read anything by her that I haven't enjoyed. This one is about these two scientists, and the man is definitely like a super grouchy, cranky, super, super tall, dark, and handsome guy, right? And he's like this professor that everyone thinks is just horrible because he's so mean to all of his students. But then you have this grad student who is working through her program, and she has to deal with this guy all the time. And so of course they're kind of like enemies at first, and then they learn to work together, and then they find a romance. And I did like this one. Next, I read a very calm, just here's an idea and let's just think about it for a little bit. A book called A Psalm for the Wild-Built by Becky Chambers. It's about a monk and a robot that meet in the wilderness, and then, thoughts on life and the purpose of life and what we should do with our time. And it's a book for like how to be more gentle with yourself, kind of. Then I read An Optimist's Guide to Heartbreak. This book is about Lucy, who returns to her hometown, and it's about her rekindling a friendship with her best friend's brother. I think this was okay. And then I was intrigued that the next book was called A Pessimist's Guide to Love, and I was like, okay. So this one was from the viewpoint of the boy in the first one. I remember now, there was a big cliffhanger at the end of the first one, so I was like, okay, I gotta find out what happened. This was very, like, that's not the way that I was hoping that was gonna go. Then I started Karen Slaughter's series about Sarah. So Sarah is a prominent figure in the Will Trent series from Karen Slaughter. Karen Slaughter writes like police mysteries. And So this was actually a series that came before Will Trent, but I didn't know that. But it starts with a book called Blindsided, where you are learning all about Sarah and her first marriage and her family and all the things. These are very gritty mystery thriller books. This was where I started that series, and I ended up reading all of them. And then I reread The Cruel Prince because I was going to read the whole trilogy. So there's The Cruel Prince, The Wicked King, and The Queen of Nothing. This is another series that's a romantasy series that people go crazy for, and I just am So it's about these enemies to lovers, but they're younger, so it's like teenagers, and there's this kingdom. And this one family's always been in power, but then there's this girl who's half human, and she's found a way to like take power and get back at this guy that's been horrible to her. Then I read Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. I liked this mostly because it was narrated by Meryl Streep, who did a phenomenal job. And it's a story that took place during COVID about this family and a farm. And they have these 3 daughters, and during COVID, nobody could go anywhere, and this farm was also suffering because their workers couldn't come work and all this stuff. And, you know, everybody's trying to isolate, and so everybody's feeling isolated, and so there's not that much to do, but the action of this book takes place because the mom is telling her daughter these stories of her childhood as an actress, her childhood and like young adult years. Then I read The Storyteller by Jodi Picoult. I read a lot of World War II books in 2025. The Storyteller is about this woman, and she befriends this older man who ends up confessing to her that he was a former SS officer, and he basically asks her to help him kill himself. And she has her mother her grandmother was a survivor of the Holocaust, so she hates this dude. So she has like every reason to want to help him. But then she takes the time to actually learn the stories, and not all things are as they seem. I went to one of my piano gigs, came back, let's get back to this. Where were we? Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. This one might be in my top 10. I have to see where things end up settling, but this one is, I think, one of his earlier works. Basically, there's this land, and there's these people in the land that kind of become like lepers to society, and they're pushed out of the regular city, and they're put in like their excluded other place, and they're kind of like, they become like almost a ghost of a person, and nobody knows why this is happening. And there's definitely like some secret baddie, and you're not sure who it is. This also has a little bit of a romance. I really liked this one. You guys know I'm a Sando fan, but this one was a 5-star for me. So there's Elantris. This year I read 3 or 4 Kristen Hanna books. I read The 4 Winds. This one is about the Great Depression. It's about a family who live in, maybe it's Oklahoma. They're like, okay, we're gonna move to California because everybody's migrating west and it's gonna be better there. Well, they get there, and then they're basically in these encampments on the sides of streets because nobody can find any work. This was a long and depressing book, and it had a twist at the end that I was not happy about. So this is probably my least favorite Kristen Hanna book. Next, I read Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This guy did make it into my book, one of my book boyfriends series this year from Moonshine Manny. And this is about this chick and this dude. They live in this land, and it's a forced proximity romance, and then there's like these vampires, but I don't think they're called vampires in the book, but there's these other, maybe they are. She thinks he's a bad dude, but then she finds out like who actually the bad guys are, and I thought it was a nice romance, it's romantasy elements, and I thought it was a good time. Then I read That's Not My Name by Megan Lally. I think that this one I only gave a 3. This book is about this young girl. She wakes up from an accident or something, and she has amnesia, and this person claims her as his daughter, but she thinks that he's a liar. So if that sounds intriguing to you, but this one I was just kind of like, it was okay. I read a few books by Loreth and White this year, and I think I like this lady. I think I gave her a 4, and I tend to usually enjoy the things I read from her, I think. This one, The Maid's Diary, it is about a maid working for a wealthy couple, and she kind of snoops in her client's house. Not great, but in this case, she discovers something that implicates this couple. Then I read Mirror Girls by Kelly McWilliams. This one is about 2 sisters, and one is white passing and one is not. They are like basically separated at birth after the lynching of their parents for being in a biracial relationship. And this book is kind of about the sisters reuniting and learning to stand up for what's right, but there's also some magical elements thrown in. Then I read another book by Frida McFadden called Brain Damage. So this one's about this wealthy dermatologist. She's married to a wealthy lawyer. They're having like this perfect life or whatever, but then she ends up getting shot, and I believe the bullet passes through her brain, and she suffers traumatic brain loss or memory loss. So she wakes up in this hospital. Not only does she have memory loss, but it's affecting parts of her brain that are affecting like her movement and her speech. And so I actually gave this book pretty high marks, like in comparison to other Frida McFaddens, because I really liked this telling of people in this brain injury unit having to relearn how to use their bodies. Next, I read A Faint Cold Fear by Karen Slaughter. This is the next one in the Grant County series from Karen Slaughter, so about Sarah from the Will and Trent series. So I won't go too much into it. I really enjoyed that whole series. Okay, so I read another Frida McFadden. Surprise, surprise. This one's called The Locked Door. This one is about the daughter of a serial killer and just kind of like how that stigma has, you know, been over her whole life. But then I can't remember if he's in jail or if he's dead, but she starts to come under suspicion because somebody is doing murders, I think, in the same way that he did. Then I read The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery, and this one is about a bookshop owner, and he takes in this abandoned child, and he's kind of like this grumpy character who was never gonna have a family, but the found family that they have together, and as he takes in this child, and the beautiful story of the bookstore. Then I read The Ministry of Time by Callie-Ann Bradley. This one was a trippy book. So basically, they're going back to save people and then bring them forward, I think. Anyway, it's been a minute, and I remember that when I got to the end of this book, there was such a big twist that I was like, what? And then I went and restarted it all the way over again. And I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is by Heather Fawcett. Sorry, I'm looking at a really small graphic. This is a cute book. There's these 2 scholars in fairy culture, and she's studying all the fairy creatures of her world, and lots of them are very dangerous. So she is a pretty brave woman in this world because she wants to anthologize all of these creatures, but she has to have a lot of guts to go out and be around a lot of them. Then I read You Will Be Mine by Natasha Preston. I think this one was free to listen to, and I think that I gave it a 3. It did not score very high for me. Basically, there's this set of, I think, teenagers, and they are being stalked by a mysterious stranger. Then I read The Man Who Died Twice, and this is the second one in the Thursday Murder Club series, and I liked it just as much. So definitely twisty, and I just love to see what hijinks these guys are going to get up to. Then I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This one is a second chance romance book. Basically, there's these 2 childhood besties turned into significant others, and they would spend, I think, every summer together. And then there was like a big thing that happened, and the woman had moved away and she hasn't seen this man in 10 years. She goes home to his mother's funeral, and then you wait to see if they will rekindle their romance. Next I read Do Not Disturb by Frida McFadden. This one is kind of like a retelling of Hitchcock's Psycho, like the whole Bates Motel. There's a single woman, she arrives there. She's very sus of this guy. There's a house with somebody up there. And then there comes a point in the story where it just totally veers off and it's not the same at all. Next, I read Frida McFadden's The Inmate. And this one is about a woman who goes to work at a prison where her former lover resides after getting convicted for a murder. It's like she's not actually sure if she did it or he did it, I think. I feel like she has some memory loss about it or something. Once upon a crime, this girl that kind of like sneaks onto a movie set to solve this crime of a woman who disappeared or something, and she's suspicious of the lead actor. But then of course she kind of falls for the lead actor, and then he's helping her solve the crimes. And then next I read Flock by Kate Stewart. There's like a love triangle and everyone's a bad boy and there's not really a good choice, but and I think that the people in this book are into sharing or something like this. She had to pick somebody to just let boss her around, so I was like rah, rah. Then I read Checkmate by Ali Hazelwood. I thought this one was really cute. This is about two chess masters, or is one of them a grandmaster? Anyway, the boy has gone on to have all this acclaim, but the girl, so they both started playing chess very young. They competed against each other, but she kind of dropped out of the spotlight because of something to do with her father. I can't remember. Then I read This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger. This book, there was a lot going on, but basically at the core, there's these three friends and they all met in this school, but it was a school for Native Americans. Two of them, though, were white boys, and I forget, they were like the wards of the people that ran the school who were like not good people. Like think, the evil stepmother kind of vibe. And those three kids, they end up escaping together and traveling down a river, like on a raft kind of situation, kind of like Tom Sawyer. And then it's just like thing after thing after thing that happens. Then I read Educated by Tara Westover. This is the story of a girl and who, along with her siblings, I think in the wilderness in Idaho or something, are raised by parents who purposely keep their kids completely out of society, so they're raised like not really knowing anything. She feels that the way that they were raised was really dangerous and unstable because of that. So it's just kind of like all this crazy stuff that happened to these kids. So then I read The Dark Bones by Loreth Ann White. I like this one. This is another, like I said, by Loreth Ann White, and this girl, is she a police officer? She comes back to her hometown to solve her father's murder, and she needs help of her like high school flame or something. And there's lots of crazy stuff that's happening at her family's cabin, and it's like a dark and twisty kind of thriller vibe. So I read All the Colors of the Dark. Oh, this one was really cool. I gave this a 4.5. There's this guy that's like, I think he's kidnapping kids. It's mostly girls, I think. You're getting this little boy's POV of being trapped by this bad person, and he's kept in the dark, and there's another person there with him, and it's like the story of them trying to survive in the dark. And then you have the girl, another girl from that same town, who just never gives up hope that these people are still alive. And so it's her POV. Then I read The Making of Us by Lisa Jewell. This one was kind of slow for me for a Lisa Jewell book. Basically, this is about it's like 4 or 5 adults that all find out that they're siblings because they had the same sperm donor father. So they were all raised very differently across Great Britain, I believe. Then I read Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. The main characters in this book, they're both like Olympian level athletes. He in swimming, she in high diving. Then I read a book by Julie Soto. This is called Forget Me Not. I thought this was cute. I gave this a 4. Basically, this is about a wedding planner and a florist who works with the wedding planner on weddings, and it's another grumpy sunshine kind of dynamic. Then I read Guilt, and this is by Raven Kennedy. This was one of my least favorite books I read all year. This book is basically a retelling of the King Midas story. All of the women in like this man's harem, he refers to them as saddles. The cringe level was so high. Then I read The Inheritance Games. Oh, I really liked this. So this one is by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is a book about a young girl, and she finds out that she's been left the millions of money from this old man she's never met. And she's like, huh? And she goes to the will hearing, and then it's like a bunch of the family members are trying to convince her to decline the inheritance, but there's like a secret note or something that he gives her, and he wants her to solve, I forget if he wants her to solve his murder or something. Then I read Frida McFadden, The Crash. This one is a laughable premise, and when you get to the twist at the end, it makes it even more laughable. There's this pregnant woman, and she is on the road to go, she has to go somewhere, I forget why, but she goes out when she knows that there's a blizzard coming. Anyway, she ends up getting into a crash, and she gets rescued off the side of the road by this couple that take her to their cabin, and then think like Misery. Then I read If You Lie by Caleb Stevens. This one had an interesting premise, but it didn't really have as much of a payoff as I would hope. But the premise is you're on a cruise ship, and everybody on the cruise is part of a cult. And everybody who's like, this is their first time on this cruise has been brought there by like a family member or like a close friend or something to be like brought into the cult. But you don't know that's what it is when you get there. And then the whole cruise is very dangerous for you as this new person. Then I read The Martian by Andy Weir because, as you know, as I've already said, Project Hail Mary was probably my favorite book of the year. This one I gave a 4. It's definitely not as interesting to me as Project Hail Mary. The main action of what's happening to him now, he's all alone, and so while it's interesting, I just didn't like it as much. So I gave that one a 4. I am glad I read it though. Then I read Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This one is cute. This one was probably one of my favorite romances I read all year. This one is about this girl, and she knows that she's about to move back home to go take care of her mother, who is having memory issues. Basically, she has early onset Alzheimer's, I believe, and her father and her sister are having a hard time taking care of the mother by themselves, and they need her help. And so she's like sad to leave her friends there and her job and everything, but she's gonna make the commitment to move. Well, she has this blind date right before she moves, and shocker, they just hit it off super, super well. But the main girl, she's like, well, sorry, like we can't really start anything because I don't want to do long distance. I thought the romance was really sweet in this one. So this guy made his way into my book boyfriends, because I thought he was a stellar gentleman, the main character in this book. So next I read 2 more books in Karen Slaughter's Grant County series. They are Faithless and Beyond Reach. Just, you know, I was already hooked. I was gonna finish it out. I really liked them. Okay, then I read Isles of the Emberdark by Brandon Sanderson. This one was cute, where there was some of the people in this book, they have birds that live with, like they're their companions, and the birds give them special powers, and that was really, really interesting. There's a character that has to take this long journey across these oceans, and he has like no light, and something about his powers help him make his way through the ocean. But like, think Princess Bride with the shrieking eels, like the waters are very dangerous the whole time. And then there's another POV in this book of a dragon, but she's been banned from using any of her powers. I can't remember why. The characters in this book are so interesting, so I really, really liked it. Then I read The Time Traveler's Wife. You know, this is a very popular book. I felt sure I would like it. I really, really did. Basically, there's this couple, and you're getting views, like snapshots of their life together all through time. And it's like Benjamin Button-esque almost, where not necessarily, but because he time travels all over the place, the first time she meets him, he's older and he meets her when she's really young. And basically he can't control when he's time traveling, and he just gets pulled to different parts of her life. The Women by Kristen Hanna. This one also might be in my top 10. So I've read, like I said, 3 or 4 from her, and I think this one was my favorite, more than Nightingale even, which I think a lot of people really, really love that one. This one is about nurses in the Vietnam War and the experience of a woman in Vietnam, like while she's in the war, but then also when she comes home, and how women that served in the war were basically told there were no women in the Vietnam War. Like, they were totally gaslit, that they didn't even experience what they experienced. There was no support for them at home. And then after they got home, you know, everybody was so mad that we even went to war in the first place. So she even feels more invalidated for her service. And this is another heartbreaking book, but I really liked it. Then I read The Emperor and the Endless Palace. This one was by Justinian Huang. I saw on somebody's video that this was like one of their favorite books. This is another trippy book, and also like unreliable narrator. But basically, again, there's kind of like these 3 storylines. There's these 3 characters that keep finding each other in these reincarnations of themselves. And in each storyline, you're not sure who the bad guy is, but the bad guy is a recurring person in each of the storylines. Now, that maybe sounds really interesting, but this is another one of those fever dream kind of books. The Boys in the Boat by Daniel James Brown. This is about, I think it's in Washington, one of the schools there, their male rowing team goes to the Olympics in Berlin, the Olympics that happened during when Hitler and his regime were really ramping up and about to, you know, start all their extermination. It was a really interesting look at the Holocaust and leading up to there from this point of view. Then I read Things We Do in the Dark by Jennifer Hillier. Okay, so this one is like the consecutive telling of these 2 women's stories who were both accused of murdering their husbands. I read The Better Sister by Alifair Burke. This one got made into a TV show, so you might have watched the show. I thought that the book was even better than the show. So there's, again, a through line of the same theme here, a woman who's being accused of her husband's murder. And this is the story of these 2 sisters, and they have something that kind of tore them apart. One sister is the bad girl, one sister is the goody two-shoes kind of, and they do not get along, and there is a child in the middle of this whole story. Then I read 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. This one was, I think, a 3. It kind of didn't pull it off quite. So basically, I think that there's this guy who owns a bookstore, and he writes a blog about like the 8 perfect murder storylines in books, and he's recommending them to his readers online. And then there's somebody who starts like just going down the list and murdering in the fashion of these books. Then I read The Rat Catcher. So this one is another possibly unreliable narrator kind of situation. This police detective is investigating these teenagers' disappearances. And it's kind of, you go back and forth between an interview she's having with a psychologist that's trying to debrief her after she's been there to the town and all this crazy stuff has happened, and then back into the action. And I thought this one was pretty interesting. Like I said, I do like unreliable narrators. This is very twisty. You're not sure the whole time who the bad guy is. So I think I gave this one a 4. Then I read Just Last Night by, I can't remember how to pronounce this name. I really liked this one. This is one of my favorite romances that I read. So main character in this book, Peak, she's funny, she's realistic. She is on, I think they're kind of like on a road trip to go, I forget where they're going, but This book definitely deals with grief. You think somebody's going to be one way and they're totally different, and just being like not judging a book by its cover kind of thing, giving somebody second chances, or maybe you shouldn't have given that person a chance at all kind of thing. Then I read Such Quiet Girls by Noelle Eiley, and this is a book about a whole bus that gets kidnapped, and all of these young children and the bus driver get put down like in this well kind of situation, and it's really dangerous and they can't breathe, and it's kind of like, will they be able to survive till they get rescued? Then I listened to Middlebridge Mysteries. This was a free listen to. Again, another like full cast recording. It's basically just a tale of this girl in college, like her different little mysteries that she solves. It's a very cozy mystery kind of series. I think that the author has probably written a bunch. Then I read The Waitress by K.L. Slater, and there's this woman and she's kind of like undercover in this waitress role. She's trying to get close to this rich man. I think she's a con artist of sorts, and she's like paying off a debt, I think. And then she starts to be confused about which side she should be on. Then I read a book called Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. I think I gave this one a 4.5. This one does have a mystery and like a very cool, revealing, like pulling apart an onion, just like a little bit at a time, revealing more and more of the mystery of this story that I found very engaging and very enjoyable. So we're in the country, somewhere in the UK, and there's this woman, and she, like the main characters are this lady, her husband, and his brother, and they all farm this land together. But also within this little village, there is this wealthy man, and he's returned home. There is a lot of intrigue because at the very start of the book, you know that someone's been murdered, but you don't know who it is. And so you're just getting these little bits at a time. And I really like this. So that's a definite recommend for me. That was Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. Then I read James by Percival Everett. This is a retelling of the Tom Sawyer story, but from the point of view of Jim or James. It was really interesting to read this well-known tale from his point of view. Then I read The Ghostwriter by Julie Clark. This book is about this woman who has been hired to be the ghostwriter for her father's memoir, and I believe her father is a murderer. This one was a real page turner. So her father, when he was 16 years old, is suspected of a murder that he didn't get convicted of, but you know, a lot of people view him and by extension her through that lens. But he goes on to become a very famous author even with all of that happening, and she gets hired to be his ghostwriter for his memoir or biography or whatever. Then I read The Return of Ruby Darling. This one is a cute little romance by Leanne Slade. This woman, I think she's on Instagram or something. She's, you know, become some influencer, and her boyfriend, now fiance, they are like an it couple, and I think he cheats on her and she breaks up with him. And she's going through this realization of like, what is my life if it's not about this relationship I've cultivated that's like not even real? So then she's going to try to find her father, and she goes to Australia, and it's like a road trip through Australia, and I really like this one. I gave it a 4. Then I read The Vacation by Catherine Croft. This one was only okay for me. I think I gave this one a 3. This is about these con artists that live in this like duplex or like villa that's by a bunch of these other villas in this vacation spot somewhere, I can't remember. And it's like this brother and sister, and I can't even remember if they really are or they aren't. I don't think that they are. Anyway, they play cons on the people that move into the villas next door. Next, I read Pretty Things by Janelle Brown. Basically, this is about a con woman who cases people by following them on Instagram because people put too much stuff out there, and then goes and inserts themselves into their lives and steals stuff. Then I read First Time Caller by B.K. Boris, and I loved this one. This one, probably 4.5 for me. There is this character, I think his name is Aiden Valentine. He has a late night talk show, and the ratings are not good because he is pretty grumpy, and you don't find out why. But so it's another kind of grumpy to sunshine situation. This young girl calls into his talk show and says that her mom needs a boyfriend or a significant other. So very Sleepless in Seattle. But instead of it being two other people that the story is about, the main romance is involved with that mom and the host of the talk show. So the mom actually comes to work on the talk show because they're going to do like a bachelorette type show on the talk show. Beartown by Frederick Bachman. This one is definitely in my top 10. I gave this one 5 star. Now, I have recommended this one a lot, and I have a couple people who did not like this book. The person that I buddy read it with really liked this book. So I think maybe you just have to kind of catch the vibe and then you really like it, but it might not be for you. So anyway, there's this town, I think it's in Sweden. It's called Beartown, and they live right next to this other town that's like the wealthier town. But these two towns are very competitive over hockey. Like the whole world is hockey. It's all about hockey, hockey, hockey. So at the beginning of the book, you find out though that there's someone's going to get shot, and the way that this author uses sound onomatopoeia through this book is just like so evocative, and I really, really enjoyed that. But I've heard from other people that they really didn't like that. But anyway, there is this crime that happens in the small town, and because the person who committed it is a really important member of the hockey team, a lot of the town just wants to look the other way and not believe the victim. And so you're getting the POV of a ton of different people. That's the other thing that I've heard is the main complaint of this book, is that it's like too hard to keep things straight. But I don't know. I got a couple hours into the book, and then I just wanted to be in that world. I just had to know what was going to happen next. So I really, really liked it. It's a story about, you know, the frailty of humanity and how none of us is all good or all bad, and helping those in your community and forgiveness and love. And I just thought that it was really beautiful. So that's Beartown by Frederick Bachman, and then I went on to read the other two in that series, and I loved all of them. So then I read the Twisted Women's Book Club. This was interesting. There were like 10 to 12 authors that wrote stories, little mystery like short stories, and some of them were connected and some were not. And I kept thinking that they were all going to be connected, so I was trying to figure out how they were. But yeah, I liked some of the stories more than others. Then I read The Last Flight by Julie Clark. This is the same author that wrote The Ghostwriter. This one was very interesting. I don't think I liked it quite as much as The Ghostwriter, but the setting that you start with is there's these two women at the airport, and they both have a big problem that they've decided that they're going to solve by swapping lives. Come to find out, one of them definitely has like the better hand in that situation and has really put the other one in a lot of danger. Okay, I read another World War II kind of freedom fighters book. This one's called The Book of Lost Names by Kristen Harmel. This takes place in occupied Paris, and basically there's this woman who is making false papers for Jews so that they can escape the Nazi persecution. Then I listened to The Picture on the Fridge by Ian W. Sainsbury. This one has a weird premise because there's been like some government testing done on people, and they were able to like connect the brain of a child to that of a serial killer so that they can like see what his next move is going to be or something. I don't know. It was like, it didn't quite connect the way it should have for me. This book is about this woman who's in a car crash with her husband, and when she wakes up, she has lost her memory. So she can remember like 10 years ago, before she married this guy, she can remember her whole childhood. And according to like her friends and acquaintances now, she doesn't even know herself. From what she can tell, it feels like there was something huge that happened that changed her to her core, that made her become this totally different person. And so it's about her finding out about that, and there's kind of a second chance romance in this one, but there's zero spice in here. Then I read The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. This book takes place in Iran, but then also in America, I believe. So it's about these two childhood friends, and you know that they haven't seen each other in like forever. In fact, I think that they were engaged. They were supposed to be married, and then something happened. And you start getting like more and more pieces of what this huge rift was, of why these two like soulmates didn't get married. And you know that the woman is married to somebody else in the current timeline. She lives in America and she has a son. She goes to the stationery store, I think, and discovers that it's owned by the man who she was in love with so many years ago. So their story starts to unravel, and you find out what really did happen all that time ago. Then I read You by Caroline Kepnes. It's about a stalker and his obsession with his target, basically. I kept holding out that this book was gonna have a good twist at the end, and it did not. And I was sorely disappointed, and I wanted my time back. I did not like this book at all. Okay, then I read The Tenant by Frida McFadden. This is probably my least favorite that I've read from her. This one is about this couple, and they take in a tenant to help make ends meet. And the twist is interesting. It's like, oh, I wasn't expecting that, but just everything that happens in this book, I was like so uninterested. Then I read Migrations by Charlotte McConaughey. So in this one, there's this woman, and she is all like the birds on the planet have gone extinct or something, and she's trying to chase down this flock of birds. And there's a reason why she's doing it, and you don't find out till the very end why it's so important her to catch up with these birds. But she's putting herself in dangerous situations, and she's basically going out into isolated territories, and she attaches herself, I think, to these fishermen that are gonna get her out there, and there's like a little bit of a mystery about her backstory. Then I read These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. I think this is the one about the father and the daughter, and they live out in the woods and they don't ever go to town, and he basically tries to keep her hidden, and you don't know why. And there's this mysterious neighbor who you think has it out for them like the whole book, and then the cops come and they're investigating stuff, and this little girl, she kind of has to survive on her own, and it's like, did she get taught enough? I thought it was interesting. Next after that, I read The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks Dalton. This is another one that's like a potential end of the world type of situation because of global warming. This one, so much happened in this book, and it was just kind of like, what? So there's this woman, and she finds herself kind of alone in Florida in like a water world type of situation. Because the world has got so hot, you can only, and the water has risen so much, it's like covered almost all of Florida, and you can only come out at night, and it's dangerous, and there's stuff in the water, and there's no light anywhere because hardly anybody lives there. That's kind of like the middle of the story. That's where you're going to get to, but you start at the beginning, the circumstances of this woman's birth, and like I said, it's just, there is a lot going on. And then by the end of this book, they bring in some supernatural, kind of fantastical elements. Hello Beautiful by Anne Napolitano. This one was interesting. This was the story of these four sisters. It's kind of like a Little Women retelling. And it's also, the mom is in there, but she's not Marmee-esque at all. I did not like the mother character. But you're in the POV mainly of two sisters, and it's just the progression of the life of these four sisters, how they kind of spread out, which ones do stay near home, and the different things that happen to them. And similar to Little Women, there is going to be one sister that passes away. There's going to be a man who's involved with two of the different sisters. I thought it was interesting. I like this one. I gave it 4 stars. Then I listened to Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is in my top 10. I really liked this one. So this one is about multiple dimensions. And this person finds himself pulled into a different dimension. He doesn't realize it for a while, but he doesn't recognize his life, and he figures out it's because he's in a different dimension. And in one of the dimensions in all of the lives that he's lived, created this ability to be able to move through dimensions and has like swapped lives with him. So messed up. He's like, hey, my life was perfect. Oh, you're just gonna take my life? So now he has to try to figure out how to get back to his life, and maybe the people there aren't safe, and how is he going to accomplish this? And it was very interesting. I've recommended this one to a lot of people. That one is 5 stars. Then I read The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. This one was interesting. I read The Perfect Marriage, and then I read The Perfect Divorce. I think I like The Perfect Divorce even more. I can't tell you the plot of The Perfect Divorce because it spoils the plot of The Perfect Marriage. There's this husband and wife, and the husband's mistress ends up dead, and she's killed in like the lodge, the cabin that they own together. She's found murdered in bed with him, and he has no memory of what happened. And so he's suspected of murder and is on trial for murder. And guess what? She's a defense attorney, and so she's representing him in the murder of his mistress. It was so twisty, and there's tons of stuff going on, and I thought it was a great read. And then while you're reading it, you're like, okay, who is the bad guy? You're suspicious of absolutely everybody. By the time you get to the second book, you know the true character of some of the people who are also in the second book. And so then you're like, I'm on to you. I know what your deal is now. And it kind of made it even more enjoyable. Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. There's this building in New York. I think it's like an old established building with gargoyles all over it. And it's like a famous building. And she is in a wheelchair. Her husband, he moves her into this building where the place that they have to live is way, way up high. And so the wife ends up feeling very stranded and like all alone when he leaves for work and stuff. She's got to be able to get around in this wheelchair, and she's new to the wheelchair. Plus she's caring for this baby. So, though there's definitely horror elements in that, but surprise, there's also these like alien bug creatures that are infesting this building. So then I listened to Margot's Got Money Troubles by Rufy Thorpe. This one was also made into a movie. Basically there's this single mother who has no support from her mother. She gets impregnated by her college professor, has to drop out of college. She's young and she doesn't understand, but he and his mother make her sign like an NDA that she won't tell anybody like that he's even the father. She's like signs away her rights to even come get child support from him or anything. So she has money problems. She decides to turn to OnlyFans, and it's just the story of that and the story of the found family she makes through that process. Next, I read The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This one is about World War II. It's again freedom fighters in France, and there's these 2 sisters, and they, one of the sisters goes off to Paris, I believe, to like a girls' school, and the older sister is old enough that she gets married and has a couple kids, and then her husband goes off to fight, I think. And so she's single, alone in her town, and a Nazi soldier comes to live with her. Then I read When She Returned by Lucinda Berry. This is a story about a woman who disappeared when she was a young mother. And she was writing an article on this guy that was a suspected cult leader. And she basically falls prey to his charms, his beguiling ways, and goes with this cult. And for a lot of the book, you're not sure about her intentions. Then I read We Used to Live Here by Marcus Kleiwer. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Anyway, there's this couple, and these 2 women, they are partners, and they buy this this house, like out in the middle of nowhere. One night there's this storm, and one of the women opens the door to this family, and they're like, hey, we traveled all the way here. We want to take a look at this house. I used to live here when I was a kid, and I really want to show my family this house. So the girl acquiesces, they come in, and then it is not good. Then next I read Not Another Love Song, and this one is by the same author as, this is by Julie Soto, the one that was about the florist and the wedding planner. This one is about two musicians. One plays the violin, the other one plays the cello, I believe. It's definitely like grumpy, again, grumpy dude, at first at least, until they get to know each other. This book though, if it doesn't sound appealing to you, that somebody can literally like climax in their intimate moment with another person by listening to a beautiful part of music, this might be a little bit too much for you. We are to the end of the year. We're almost done, guys, don't worry. So next I read The Franchise Affair by Josephine Tey. This is another book that was suggested to people who love Agatha Christie. This is about these two spinsters, but one is the mom spinster and one is her daughter. You know, she's in her 40s, shock, and she doesn't have a man or a child. They live together in this house, and this girl shows up one day with the cops, and she's like, you guys kept me here for 30 days, you beat me, you forced me to do all your work for you, and I have evidence, I have people who back me up, I can tell you what this specific room looks like in your house. And they're like, we've never met you before, what's going on? And the cops are about to throw them in jail because there's so much evidence against them, and these ladies are like, what? Then I listened to How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. This book kind of takes place in two times. There's this woman, she has this fortune, and her great grand niece, I feel like, gets called to the reading of, it's not her will, I forget what they called it, but this woman's not dead yet, but she finds out that she's the main benefactor. And she's like, that's weird, because I'm pretty sure I remember that my mother was included like as one of her benefactors, but then she finds out that her mother got struck from everything, and now she's the main benefactor. And she goes there, and before she can meet with her aunt gets murdered. And in the past POV, you find out that this woman, when she's a young person, had gone, and this fortune teller had given her this fortune. And it was very cryptic, but she had kind of like took it as Bible and was looking for all these things to come true in her fortune. But one of the things was that she was going to be murdered. I thought it was very interesting. And I read the next one right after, and it was called How to Seal Your Own Fate. And this one is right after the story of the last one, so I don't really want to say too much about the plot of this one, because it kind of gives away what happened in the end of the last one. But again, there's another murder and in the same house, and you have to figure out who the bad guy is this time. I liked both of them. I thought they were good. I think I gave them both either a 3.5 or a 4. Then I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo in my top 10, ding ding, right at the end of the year here. I loved this one. So I had already read Daisy Jones and the Six, and for me that one was just okay. This one I really loved. The main character, Evelyn Hugo, is so compelling and so interesting. She's a woman who is an actress in like the golden age of cinema. Let's say she's like Debbie Reynolds' time. You know, she started around then and didn't have a very long career, but the extra element is she has these 7 husbands and she's very famous for it. But what the whole world doesn't know is she's in love with a woman the whole time. And I just thought it was so beautiful. And this woman has so many faults, and yet you're so compelled by her story. So I loved it. Highly recommend if you haven't read that one, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Then I listened to 2 parts Sugar, 1 part Murder by Valerie Burns. This is another kind of like cozy mystery. This woman goes to this town and inherits this bakery, and she's been like an Insta famous kind of person, and she I think with the bakery, she's left the dog from her aunt. And really, this is the story about this woman falling in love with her dog. Then I listened to Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I think I gave this one a 4.5. This one, I'd read a bunch of books that were kind of like mystery romances the year before by this woman. This one is her first romantic-y kind of book, and I thought it was really interesting. This book is an enemies to lover kind of romantic-y book. There's these children of these two kingdoms, and like to improve relationships between the two lands, the daughter is set to marry the son of the other land. But when it comes time for the daughter to go to marry the man, he decides that it's actually the other daughter that he wants, that hasn't been prepared her whole life to go be like a spy in this other land. Then I listened to Ruth Ware, The Death of Mrs. Westaway. This book, there's this girl that's really down on her luck. She owes money to the mob, kind of, and she finds out that she is about to come into a whole bunch of money by this Mrs. Westaway that's named her in her will. And she's like, I am pretty sure I'm not actually related to this person. I think that this is a case of mistaken identity, but she's so down on her luck and she's really worried that this mob is after her. And so she decides to go out there and claim this fortune, even though she's not actually the person that they're looking for. Next, I read King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. This one is about the son of a man who runs a crematorium, and he goes home. He's like this wealthy money manager in the city or whatever. He has his whole established life that he's built from the ground up. He came from nothing, and he has to go home because the dad was in a car accident and is in the hospital. And when he gets there, he finds out that there are definitely suspicious circumstances surrounding the dad's accident, and he finds out that his younger brother has done some stuff that is putting everybody and the whole family in danger. And this is another movie where you run into the mob and people owing a bunch of money to the mob, and what are they going to do? Then I read A Serial Killer's Guide to Marriage by Asia McKay. This book is about these two serial killers that get together, and then they decide to stop because they have a kid, and the wife is basically holding this major grudge that her husband made them stop, basically. And she never notices the fact, like all the good stuff he's doing for her and helping them. And she's just resenting him the whole time. And that was super annoying for me. I was like, come on. You do get, I think, both POVs. This one just kind of fell flat for me. And unfortunately, that's how I ended the year. So that was the last book that I read in 2025. It was a lot. It was such a fun time. I love reading books. I just love falling into each new universe and becoming totally immersed. So I hope that you enjoyed that. If you are still here at the end, leave me a comment of a red car if you're here all the way at the end. I would be interested to see who made it all the way through to hear about all the books I read. So that's going to be it for today. I have put up on the screen here what my top 10 were. I hope that you found this helpful or interesting in some way. I will see you back for another video very soon. Happy reading in 2026, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Okay, take care. Bye.